Hello everyone, I'm Liam and welcome to another episode of the Indie Game Review, a series where I find a new indie game on Steam, play it for a couple of hours and then give my opinion on it and whether I think you will enjoy it. If you enjoy this video, why not give it a like and watch another video? I have a couple linked in the description of every episode, or you can click in the top right corner. And make sure to comment any indie game you would like me to review below. In today's episode, the game we're going to be reviewing is Mind Over Magic. Mind Over Magic is a colony sim created by development team Sparky Pants and published by Keel Publishing, who have had a hand in creating games such as Don't Starve, Rift of the Necrodancer and Oxygen Not Included, which does make sense as Mind Over Magic feels a bit like Oxygen Not Included, mixed with Fallout Shelter with the aesthetics of Hogwarts Legacy. The game was released on Steam in early access in December 2023, but Sparky Pants and Keel Publishing released the first official 1.0 release of the game on the 12th of February 2025. Now I love a magic/wizarding game, so I was really excited to get stuck into Mind Over Magic, but before we get into the gameplay, let's talk a bit about the tech and the settings of the game. As many of the games we review are, Mind Over Magic is created in the Unity engine, the game engine behind huge games such as Genshin Impact, Batman Arkham Shadow, Content Warning, and so many more. Now when it comes to video settings in the game, it's actually quite bare bones, which I was surprised to see. You can do the usual things like change the display resolution and brightness, but that's about it. You can change the season theme to Halloween or Christmas if you fancy, which is quite cool, but apart from that, not much option. The game's audio settings are actually more in depth than the graphical settings. There are plenty of different audio sliders, plus the ability to mute the enchanter phone, which I think just plays music, I'm not sure though. The game does have remappable keybinds, which I always love to see, and the UI has a few settings also, but the most in-depth settings are definitely the difficulty and the gameplay settings. When playing the game, if an important event happens, the game will pause for you to see what's happened, and in the gameplay settings, you can pick specifically what you want to pause the game or not, and in terms of the difficulty settings, I'll talk about them a little later down the line. The game does have Twitch integration, which I believe connects to an external Twitch app specific to the game, but I didn't enable it, so I'm not actually quite sure what it does. And the game does actually run quite nicely on the Steam Deck, giving a consistent 45 FPS on low settings with very minimal frame drops. But the game unfortunately does not have official controller support, which in turn means that you have to use the trackpad and the triggers to mimic the mouse clicking, which is annoying. But for some reason I found it a little easier to play Mind Over Magic than other point and click games that I've tried on the Steam Deck. No idea why, I just didn't find it that frustrating this time around, but either way I would actually prefer some real official controller support. Now that we've spoken about the tech behind the game, let's talk about the gameplay. When you load the game for the first time, you're met with a cool menu with cool music, but I do have a slight issue with it. Now I don't expect every game, and especially indie games, to use in-engine things in the menu, but I do have a feeling that the menu video was recorded in 1080p, which means when played on a 1440p monitor or higher, it just doesn't look good quality. I'm not sure if it will show in this video, but you can definitely see some pixelation from the bitrate. Just a thing for Sparky Pants to take into consideration. First impressions are important, and seeing a low quality video will turn some people off. When you start a new game, you're given 3 difficulty options: relaxed, which is the lowest difficulty, then standard, which is the recommended difficulty for most players, and then relentless for the hardcore gamers. But what's really cool though is the difficulty customization. If you click a difficulty then click customize below, you can literally change every single aspect of the difficulty to tailor it to your needs. And once you've decided the difficulty, you're given some backstory to the game, in which your school was once the most prestigious school in all the land, but now a terrible curse brings a deadly fog which crushes the school's conviction with the weight of its malice. Which to me sounded like a load of mumbo jumbo when I first played. I thought, what the fuck are they talking about with conviction? But it does make more sense once you get into the game. You can then rename the school, where I aptly named it the Indie Mage School of course, and then you can pick 3 starting staff and their skills. I imagine the skill choosing is more for people starting second playthroughs and so on, so I just stuck with the 3 that the game chose for me. Once you've picked your staff and the game starts, there is a tutorial book in which you can learn about different things, and believe me, there are a lot of things to learn about. It's obvious this game has been going for well over a year, because the amount of things I had to wrap my head around to get going was so overwhelming. So to keep things nice and top level, I'm going to give it a basic breakdown. In the game, you must build your school to the best it can be, building different rooms such as teaching rooms, bedrooms, medical bays, kitchens, dining rooms, and so forth. And to build rooms, you must collect resources which can be found outside the school. At the beginning, you should definitely focus on the 3 main resources: wood, stone, and gutberry vines. If you don't focus on gutberry vines, your staff and eventual students will constantly be starving, which will make them very unhappy, which in turn will lower their conviction, which you really don't want to happen. But I'll get into that later. While you're building your school, you need to be wary of the cursed fog. At the bottom of the screen, you have an hourly timer that goes through your day, and on the right side, it will let you know how many days you have until the fog consumes your school. The fog grows a little bit closer every night, and the only way to repel it is via a ritual using the mana font. A big crystal underneath the school, which has the power to repel the fog further and further away, not only providing you with more time, but also unlocking rarer resources outside the school. So once you've started collecting the 3 main resources, you can start building. But before you even start building the ground level of the school, I would definitely recommend building the Arcane Secretary first, as this gives you the ability to research, which is basically the difference between failing miserably at the game or becoming a head teacher good enough to rival Dumbledore. As I said a bit earlier, the options you have when it comes to actually building the school are pretty much endless. You can build each and every room exactly how you want it. You can even make the school roof nice and symmetrical, or you can give it that cool old English Diagon Alley vibe by making it crooked as a witch's nose. And as well as building and maintaining the school above the ground, you can explore what's called the Underschool, a series of dungeons which include battles that not only provide your staff and students with XP, but also gives you some resources that can't be found above ground, such as iron. I did write in the notes of my review that it was frustrating that the only way to get iron was through the battles in the Underschool, but it turns out I'm an idiot and it does actually spawn a little bit of iron at the entrance, so you can get enough to build the first few things you need. The biggest issue I had with the game though was just how in depth it is and just how out of my depth I felt. When I first played the game, I was constantly finding my staff and students to be starving, and when looking for iron, they constantly lost HP in battles, and as I hadn't unlocked the research plan for medical beds yet, which is one of the first ones unlockable, but I was so overwhelmed I had no clue. So because I didn't have medical beds, my staff couldn't heal, which in turn made them die, and if they didn't die, they lost enough conviction that they would break. And let's talk about conviction for a second. The way the conviction system in the game works is, as long as things are going generally well, you know, your staff are well rested and fed and the school isn't in any danger, then your staff and student conviction will be nice and high. But if things start going wrong, your staff and students conviction will eventually start to decline, and once declining, if they hit a conviction status of 0, they're very likely to break. I do believe a break can happen in a couple of different ways, but what happened to me was one of my staff members broke and then turned into some kind of Jack looking demon and started wrecking all the shit I'd spent hours building. It was so demoralizing that I quit the game shortly after and thought, fuck this, I can't get the hang of this game, so I'm just going to do a different game. But something inside me said, Liam, just start again with what you've learned. And so I did. I unfortunately didn't record me starting the game again, but as you can see, I managed to take what I'd learned from my mistakes and put it into practice. And after that, I suddenly found the game to be intuitive and relaxing. I didn't feel like I was fighting a losing battle the whole time anymore, and I felt in complete control. And honestly, I'm really glad I went back to it, because in the second save, I've been having so much fun that even when things go wrong, it's not frustrating at all, and I'm proactively learning how more and more mechanics work and how I can further improve my school with them. And that's basically where I am now after 4 hours playtime. So even though this review isn't actually super in-depth and covering all the possible aspects and possibilities of the game, I've decided to keep it like this, as I think it's more of a review of why you shouldn't give up on the game, even if it seems overwhelming at first. Because once you actually get the hang of it, it's a really fun game and I was unable to put it down. So, overall thoughts. Mind Over Magic is definitely the most frustrating game I've reviewed so far, but it's also one of the most rewarding. The feeling I got once I realised how to actually play the game properly was a bit like that feeling I got when I beat the first boss in Dark Souls and then realised that, yeah, I can do this. I do think though, if the game suggested playing on relaxed first to get to grips with the mechanics in the game, maybe I would have been spared the frustration, but to be honest, that frustration has kind of enhanced the experience and made it what it is. So with that in mind and everything else mentioned, I'm going to give Mind Over Magic a 7.5 out of 10. The game is chock full of content, and although it can be difficult, it can also be very rewarding. If you're into colony sims or survival games, I would definitely recommend giving it a go, even if it is £18.99, which is slightly on the pricier side for an indie game, but it's still well worth it in my opinion. So give it a go and let me know what you think of Mind Over Magic in the comments below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified for the next episode of the Indie Game Review.